and welcome back at ARIS TV, today live from ProcessWorld in Berlin. And today my interview partner is Professor Michael Rosemann. Hi.
Good morning.
Michael is Professor for Information Systems at Queensland University for Technology in Australia, and he's well known for his research in the field of BPM. So Michael, you are doing a lot of research, but also you are providing advice around BPM for companies. And what is your opinion? How do companies deal with the topic BPM?
The short answer would be in very different ways. So we see a high level of curiosity, but there are very different pathways how companies approach BPM. We see companies who heavily utilize tools like ARIS, with a strong focus on process modeling and the related IT implementation. Other organizations focus very much on strategic alignment, on governance. And maybe a third category are companies who focus on the soft side, on people and cultural change. So in a nutshell, we see different pathways how we approach BPM, and we try to summarize those different pathways in what we call a BPM maturity model.
Okay, and this BPM maturity model, how is it used in practice by the customers or by the people you're advising?
Yes, let me quickly introduce the core of this maturity model. So the maturity model has got 6 factors. Those 6 factors are strategic alignment, that means how well does your BPM initiative support your strategy, governance, roles, responsibilities, decision-making processes. Third would be methods, methodologies, like the way I do process modeling. The fourth component is information technology, process-aware information systems. We've got people, that's a 5th factor, that means process skills and BPM skills. And 6, culture, the mental mindset, to what extent do employees, to stakeholders buy into the idea of BPM. And what we do is, along those 6 factors, we try to understand what are the current capabilities of an organization. And then we try to give individual judgment and assessments for each of those 6 factors. So in practice, we leave the organization with a better understanding of where are their relative strengths. That could be they're quite strong on process modeling, but also where are their relative issues. Well, it could be something like limited capabilities when it comes to governance. And in a nutshell, we try to develop a BPM roadmap, a BPM strategy out of this that gives you very comprehensive advice that goes far beyond methods, models and IT solutions for the next 3 to 5 years, how to approach BPM.
So it's strategic advice in BPM and how to move forward when establishing a holistic BPM.
Absolutely.
approach.
So we see this as a very tangible way to develop a BPM strategy. BPM strategy may be a topic that is really underutilized, under-researched. We don't see a lot of advice, whether it's from consultants and academics, on how to approach this topic. Many BPM initiatives have a strong focus on bottom-up capabilities, but lack the bigger picture. And so the BPM maturity model is one proposal to fill this gap.
Okay, great. And I know that you plan to publish a book.
Yes.
It's called the BPM Handbook in the near future. And while studying a little bit for that book, I saw an article from you about the topic of BPM governance and how to establish a BPM service portfolio. What does it mean, a BPM service portfolio? Thanks,
Eric, for mentioning this book. This is one approach where we try to quantify how we approach one of those factors, in this case, governance. In the first instance, we helped organizations to understand what's the maturity level. The second question was always, and how do I increase the maturity? So now, factor by factor, we try to close this gap. The service portfolio is an attempt to understand how an organization provides services internally. With other words, we try to identify what are the services of a BPM support office or a BPM center of excellence, your internal BPM consultants. So what we've done over the last year, we identified 15 different BPM services. It could be process modeling, process improvement, process governance, and so on. And we try to position them in a 2x2 matrix. On the one side, it's about capability. How well do you do? How well do you provide this service? And the other dimension is what we call demand. To what extent does the organization have an appetite, a desire to consume this service? So you end up with 4 different quadrants and a true matrix that describes your BPM service portfolio.
I've seen those quadrants, and this is interesting because you can, if you arrange your BPM services within those quadrants, you can for yourself identify which strategies you should take out of those service arrangement within the quadrants. What are the strategies that you find out?
That's right. So we try to rescue an idea that you might know for marketing portfolio, where you have strategic business units and you have normative strategies. So we have 4 different quadrants. The top right, as you can imagine, is where my capability is high and the demand is high. We call this the kind of perfect match. That means you provide a service, you provide it quite well, and it's in high demand. We did first empirical studies, and it turns out that typically process modeling and process improvement are in that corner. Nevertheless, typically the demand is still higher than the capability. So while we do modeling and improvement, the organization wants to see even more, even better services. In the top left corner, we have high demand, but quite low capability, and that's a kind of dangerous zone. We call it the vacuum. The organization wants to have a service that you cannot provide. Very often you find topics like process compliance or process automation. Compliance often requires very specific know-how that your business analysts who might be good on modeling or implementing processes typically do not have. So there's a danger zone. The question is, how do I close this gap? It could be done via internal training, or if there's a short-term demand, via external consulting services, of course. In the bottom right, we have what we call potentially over-engineered area. In the over-engineered quadrant, that means you have a high level of capability, but the organization has no real appetite for this service. Something like process simulation might be there. You picked up how to simulate a process, you understand how to model and execute the simulation, but the organization really doesn't know this service. It's not aware of this, has no desire to consume this service. We close this gap by, in the extreme case, retiring the service, and understanding maybe we really don't need this service, or even better, you do marketing for it.
Let the people know that there is a service like that.
Absolutely. We see a massive gap when it comes to marketing for the idea of BPM. I always say you buy a car from someone who's a salesperson, but an engineer builds your car. In the BPM world, we seem to have a track record of I buy a tool, I model a process, and I try to sell the idea of BPM. We have a whole research project on how to do marketing for BPM to close this gap. And just to wrap it up, and the final quadrant is where we allow in capability and allow in demand. And these could be future topics. We call this process forensics or process portfolio management. We will not say they're not relevant, but at this point in time, you don't have really skills as an organization, and the organization itself has now demand for it.
Great, this was really interesting. And I think if the people want to know more, they will find this on your website too, on your educational and research website. You will find the link to the website within this movie, and I'm sure it's pretty interesting to see what you can get more information there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Eric, for the opportunity.
And we will see us again with the next episode. Bye.
Bye.